Hello and welcome to Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. I'm Larry Rhodes.
And I'm Johannes, and we want you to know that if you don't believe in God, you're not alone. Right here in East Tennessee, you can find free-thinking atheists and agnostics. This is a show for them and people curious about living a life free of supernatural beliefs.
This is a call-in show. However, we only have one phone line, so if you can't get through, we invite you to email questions to freethoughtforum@yahoo.com. However, we now have a Twitter feed, and you can tweet directly to us at @FFTVKnox, period. So please do get your tweeter going and see if you can't put some questions or comments through.
The monthly activities of the Rationalists of East Tennessee on the first and third Sunday mornings of the month are usually lectures with lively roundtable discussion. The second Sunday is book club. The fourth Sunday is the Reflections Gathering, a potluck afternoon gathering at a member's home.
The Atheist Society of Knoxville is a fun meetup group, often at a bar or restaurant. Tonight's meetup is at Barley's in the Old City for happy hour after the show for food, drink, and conversation. Also on Fridays, we generally meet at the Field House on top of Bearden Hill. Look for the silver-jacketed copy over there of The God Delusion standing upright on the table to find us.
Today is July 10th, and we'll be talking about skepticism. But before any of that, in the news.
Right, from the Texas, we've been talking about this for the last couple of weeks, and the Texas GOP platform for 2012 has some funny language in it. The 2008 and 2004 had funny language in it too, getting rid of the Department of Education, the Department of Health and Human Services, Department of Health, and several other things like that. The IRS, getting rid of the IRS. But this latest affront prompted an article from Forbes magazine recently, July 1st, called The Terrifying Texas GOP Platform. Let me read the specific section of the platform that this person is objecting to. The Texas GOP platform says that knowledge-based education. We oppose the teaching of higher order thinking skills. If you can imagine, they are against the teaching of thinking skills. Critical thinking skills and similar programs that are simply relabeling of outcome-based education. I'm not sure exactly where they're getting that. Which focus on behavior modification and have the purpose of challenging the students' fixed beliefs and undermining parental authority. I just can't imagine. I'll go ahead and read what John T. Harvey of Forbes magazine says about this. Quote, I am so distressed by the 2012 platform released by the Texas Republican Party that I find it impossible not to comment. While I am hardly in agreement with everything forwarded by the Democrats and have taken aim at President Obama on a number of occasions, especially with respect to his desire to balance the federal budget, it is difficult to believe that what the Republicans put together during their convention in Fort Worth was even written in the 21st century. It is anything but pragmatic. The document has already made headlines with the portion that opposes the teaching of higher order thinking skills and critical thinking skills. Although a partial retraction followed, this was in terms of the wording, not the general meaning. It appears that their fear is that these focus on behavior modifications and have the purpose of challenging the students' fixed belief and undermining parental authority. Think about that for a moment. First off, do they really and truly believe that the teachers and school boards across the state of Texas are designing curricula specifically aimed at training children to challenge their parents? Second, do you know which values and concepts are rejected in the absence of higher order critical thinking? None. Therefore, depending on the time and place which we decide to stop challenging ideas and meekly accepting what we are told, we might thereafter be forever racist, sexist, communist, fascist, Democrats, capitalists, Christians, Buddhists, Lutherans, geocentrics, pacifists, Wiccans, or whatever the prevailing views of that day are. Nothing would ever again be questioned. We need to implement such were we to implement such a policy, we'd have to be certain that they already identified the concepts and values that were correct, whatever that really means. Even a cursory reading of the platform makes it very clear that this is precisely what the Texas Republicans believe and what those concepts and values are. This begs the question, who is really aiming to force their beliefs on our children, Texas schools or Texas Republicans? Personally, I prefer what I learned during my 12 years of Catholic school and 8 years of higher public education. If a belief does not stand up to scrutiny, then we shouldn't believe it. If it does, it will hold up even all the more strongly for the very reason that it withstood our challenge. If what is true is actually true, it needs to be investigated. It has nothing to fear from investigation. It will only confirm it. Another disturbing feature of the document is that while they, quote, urge the legislature to direct expenditures to academics as a first priority, they also contend that, quote, since data is clear that additional money does not translate into additional achievement and higher education costs are out of control, we support reducing taxpayer funding to all levels of educational institutions. Yes, you heard that right. Not only is the second statement inconsistent with the first, not to mention rather frightening, it isn't true. The implications of the data are far from clear. In a point in fact, economists have found that, not surprisingly, it matters how the money is spent. For example, reducing class sizes, adding additional remedial help appear to be particularly cost effective. Thus, contrary to the Texas GOP's assertion, there are programs that both add to costs and increase educational achievement. Furthermore, significant finding in the literature over the years has been that the teacher quality is absolute #1 factor driving student attainment. Surely the Texas GOP is not arguing that higher salaries would not help to attract higher quality teachers, or that funding for training and apprenticeship would not be well spent. Bottom line is the actual evidence flies in the face of their claim that the research shows unequivocally that there is no connection between funding and outcomes. It simply isn't true. A cynic might be tempted to conclude that the real goal of the Texas Republican Party is simply to find a means of circumventing Article 7 of the Texas Constitution, which requires the state to, quote, establish and make suitable provisions for the support and maintenance of an effective system of public free schools. Wherein, according to the Texas Supreme Court in Edgewood ISD versus Kirby, efficient is not equivalent to economical, inexpensive, or cheap. I hope that's not the case.
End quote.
End quote. So thank you, John T. Harvey, for summing up our thoughts rather concisely and adding to them rather eloquently. Going on to the main program.
Yes.
Apparently I'm first speaker, too. Today's show is about skepticism. We have a timely and important topic for you, skepticism, whether you're considering buying something presented in a commercial or supporting a candidate, or even considering adopting a whole belief system. The one thing that should be in the forefront of your mind is skepticism about the claims made to you by those selling them to you. If they're touting how easy it is to use, then I might ask how expensive it is. If they say it's very, very affordable, I might ask about the durability or quality of workmanship. If they make fantastic claims that even nature won't support, I would think very long and hard indeed before committing to it.
Think laser hair combs for hair growth. It seems asinine. So you check journals, you check everything you can. Nothing supports that laser light hitting the scalp causes hair to grow. Thus, you don't buy the product.
I was thinking more of nature not supporting it in things like talking snakes, walking on water, splitting the oceans into two.
That works as well.
Again, and especially if they say that if I don't buy into it, something bad will happen to me. It would be very skeptical indeed about claims that use fear. Fear tactics are red flags to me, and most charlatans know that they can elicit an emotional response that can circumvent a person's natural skepticism.
Absolutely, Larry. And talking about supernatural claims, James Randi, a retired stage magician, has offered $1 million, this is not recent by the way, to anyone who can demonstrate any supernatural, paranormal, or occult ability under laboratory conditions. That's $1 million that has been sitting, gathering dust, for over 10 years now. To date, no one has been able to show any evidence for any claims of the type. Not only that, but other foundations have similar prizes. Successful physics might go to India and contact
Psychics.
Yeah, psychics. Why does it physics?
Physics.
I'm prone to think about physics, not psychics. I live in the real world. Who will pay 100,000 rupees to any person or persons who will demonstrate any psychic, supernatural, paranormal, or any other kind of supernatural ability under satisfactory observation conditions. Also, Prabir Ghosh will pay 20 million rupees to anyone who claims to possess supernatural power of any kind and proves the same.
Right, Johannes. And the Australian skeptics offer $100,000 Australian, $80,000 for the psychic, and $20,000 for anyone who nominates a person who successfully completes the Australian Skeptics Challenge. The Association of Skeptical Inquiry, a UK skeptical organization, has offered £12,000 for the proof of psychic powers. The Independent Investigations Group offers $50,000. Now that's called the Independent Investigations Group, not an investigations group. Offers $50,000 prize. The North Texas Skeptics offers $12,000. This must be a very small group. To any person who can demonstrate any psychic or paranormal power or ability under scientifically valid observing condition. The Quebec Skeptics offer $10,000 to any astrologer who can demonstrate her craft according to a formal scientific experiment.
A group in New Zealand calling itself Immortality is offering a prize of 2 million New Zealand dollars to anyone who can display an actual paranormal ability under controlled conditions. Finally, conjurer Chris Angel offered $1 million of his own money to Uri Geller and Jim Callahan if they could psychically determine the contents of an envelope he held in his hand. And all of this money goes unclaimed. What does that say for the craft of psychics, paranormal investigators, etc.?
Right, exactly. Johannes, you've prepared an editorial for us of sorts, haven't you?
I have. I have a rant prepared. I guess we can call it an editorial, but then again, what is an editorial but an on-air rant?
Well, let's just take a moment to ask people to call in anytime. The lines are open, and we will be talking about stuff, ranting about things, and we invite your calls and comments.
Turn on your DVRs. This might be good. This might be awful. There's a caveat emptor here. Caveat viewer, I guess. Today's show is about skepticism. Though not all skeptics are atheists, and not all atheists are skeptics, there is quite a bit of overlap between the two groups. To that end, we're doing a show about the overlap. Skepticism, at its core, and in the most common usage, is a way of looking at the world and demanding evidence for claims and conclusions made by others. Every child is curious at some point as to how babies are made. Some outright reject the stork as an explanation, and those, my friends, are little skeptics. To truly understand every facet of how babies are made, one needs a PhD in reproductive biology. But that isn't necessary to get to the truth. This leads me to an important disclaimer before we go any further. There are degrees of truth. Isaac Asimov once wrote on the topic, but we're going to gloss over his argument for the sake of brevity. To say the world is flat is wrong. To say it is spherical is still wrong. The Earth is an oblate spheroid that's 43 kilometers wider at the equator than it is from pole to pole. But that statement is far less wrong than to say the Earth is flat. To say that babies come from sex is not necessarily accurate, nor the whole picture, but it is sufficiently accurate for the purposes of general knowledge and informed discussion. Far more so than the explanation of the stork. This leads me to a second disclaimer. Our hypothetical child, curious about the origin of babies, likely did not conduct experiments his or herself to determine if sex is the origin of babies. He or she compared and read the available arguments, data, and evidence. The average American does not have the funding, training, or equipment to determine the accuracy of the theory of evolution, so we rely on peer-reviewed publications and available data. In general, scientific publications are among the best sources of data. Rest assured that a given experiment has been duplicated and its results or conclusions confirmed, that or a scathing rebuttal has been published, and some scientist somewhere has egg on his or her face. I think we might or might not have a call, do we?
No, the screener hasn't reported one yet.
Fair enough. Now it's time for a fun anecdote to wash the taste of all those disclaimers from our mouths. When I was maybe 8 years old or so, our school's DARE, an anti-drug abuse program administered in many schools to this day, our DARE officer called an emergency meeting in late June to deliver a dire warning to the PTA. It turns out that the police department had acquired intelligence that a drug dealer was planning to give temporary tattoos laced with LSD to the children at our town's annual 4th of July celebration. Here's where skepticism comes into play, and here are a few readily available facts. LSD is very poorly absorbed transdermally, so much so that even liters of the stuff, standard dosages in micrograms by the way, applied to the skin produce no discernible effects. Transdermal carriers like DMSO, dimethyl sulfoxide, also do not work with LSD. Even with alcohol applied to the skin and rubbing to induce perforations, LSD delivery via temporary tattoo ranges as a possibility from extremely unlikely to outright impossible. Let's also ignore for a moment how patently absurd the idea of an 8-year-old barely able to ride his or her bike beyond the streetlights as a drug user is. There were pharmacologists, biologists, chemists, biochemists, and even a biological engineer among the members of the PTA, but nobody spoke up to tell the DARE officer that what she was proposing was ludicrous. Not one word of reason. Flyers were circulated, children warned, and an article was even placed in the local paper. Nobody took the time to point out that this was not only ridiculous, but it also diminished the authority and credibility of our nation's largest youth anti-drug program. A bit of skepticism could have averted a wasteful, embarrassing, and unnecessary moral panic. This is important, and it applies to more than just small towns overreacting to non-issues. Lack of skepticism has done severe harm to our nation and economy. Fear sells, especially visceral fear. If the obese were prone to spontaneously explode, destroying buildings, then obesity would be our #1 concern as a nation. Why? Because it's viscerally alarming, like a Michael Bay movie. And yet, terrorism, a threat that ultimately kills far fewer people than obesity-related illness, is viewed as an immense threat, requiring everything from equally immense funding, new government agencies, new legislation, and an elaborate, did I mention expensive, national security apparatus. The brain is wired to care about immediate threats. Big, impressive, scary, unpredictable threats. It's our nature. We're far less prone to worry about boring, statistical, and highly predictable threats. Explosions naturally garner more attention than data spreadsheets. The news media, as a profit-driven entity, capitalizes on this with great acumen. We can't blame the media for this. It would be like asking a zebra to change its stripes. We see it all around us. Rapists behind every corner, child molesters in every van, terrorists in your gated community, Aruba, where your pretty young daughters go to die. Incomprehensible foreigners invading your country and culture, kids doing Jenkum, Dungeons and Dragons as a satanic front, and Saddam is coming to get Granny with his WMDs. All this and more is not only watched with credulity, but fully believed and acted upon. We've been sold an elaborate siege fantasy that is just as fictitious and manufactured as rubber dog poop one would buy in a joke shop. A little skepticism, just a tiny bit of critical thinking, could have prevented all of this. Please don't take this rant as partisan. It's certainly political in nature, but hardly partisan. Politicians of every creed and stripe have capitalized on manufactured nightmares to garner power, and it's been happening largely because we, the people, refuse to exercise a bit of skepticism. Like Larry said earlier, if they invoke fear, I would have a lot of questions for them. Skepticism, however, can short-circuit. That's when it needs to be paired with a little bit of critical thinking. I am talking about conspiracy theories. It's perfectly okay to question any narrative given to you by the government, media, church, teacher, or any figure or organization of authority. However, honest inquiry can sometimes lead down the dark and destructive path of conspiracy theorizing. The influence of numerous banks, international corporations, and other such business entities is obvious in the modern politics of almost every nation on this planet. Why? Because they lobby. They have campaign money, and they drive the economy to a great extent. It stands to reason that if a political system can be influenced for the benefit of those with enough power or money to do so, it will be. This is not a conspiracy. It's human nature. Organizations like the Trilateral Commission, the RAND Corporation, and the Council on Foreign Relations seem to wield power, but they are really just advisory and analysis groups. People looking for a conspiracy in these organizations will naturally find one. If a small handful of organizations churn out almost 90% of all policy proposals, as the CFR and RAND Corporation do, it stands to reason that a few of them will ultimately become policy. Conspiracy theorists latch onto these few proposals that become policy and run with them, ignoring the far larger number of unused proposals. This isn't done to enslave people or move the world towards a single, ultimate, and premeditated goal. More than these actions are taken because they're good for business. Good for the business of running nations, good for the business of making profits, and good for the business of enriching those in control of the relevant public and private entities. Humans like to make sense of the world. Religion and superstition have done this since before recorded history. Science is an empirical and logical way to get to the bottom of how the world functions. Psychology, economics, sociology, anthropology, etc. are all means to make sense of human actions that are often nonsensical, but still must have underlying causes and mechanisms. Conspiracy theories are merely a form of economics, if you will. Like economics, conspiracy theories try to take complex problems and boil them down to mechanisms and drivers of action. Where conspiracy theories fail is that evidence, statistics, and other methods commonly used in economics are ignored or used selectively. It is far simpler and easier to conclude that a few powerful people run the world and to guess at their agenda than to mix psychology, sociology, economics, history, and anthropology to form a coherent view of the world. Much the same as the religious will do. It's much simpler to believe in a fictional deity in the supernatural or paranormal than to actually investigate the true nature of the universe using experiment. Human interactions at all levels that constitute world affairs and history build to become a Gordian knot of understanding. It's far simpler to distill it all down into a simple conspiracy, or blame God, than to attempt true understanding. In the same way that religion and superstition are favored over science by some, conspiracy theories are favored by some over economics, psychology, sociology, anthropology, etc., in understanding human affairs. So I guess the point of all of this is to say, don't get lazy. Don't write off things as the work of some shadowy organization, deity, or supernatural force. Do your homework, because there are a lot of charlatans, politicians, is there really a difference? Hucksters, snake oil salesmen, demagogues, and for-profit gurus whose wealth and power depend on people not doing their homework and not thinking for themselves. Remember that it is skeptical inquiry into the way the universe works that separates you from a mud hut on the savannah. We do have a caller. Hello, caller. Can we have a name or nickname?
Well, hello, this is Faithless Forest. I've been watching the show and been enjoying the editorial. But I couldn't help but think that you'll kind of look at one category, while it may not be as our favorite topic, bash, such as supernatural belief. But that's the alien abduction people. Man, every time I hear that, I'm just shocked at the story they tell.
Absolutely. We're having a little bit of trouble hearing you, but I think we got you. The alien abduction people. There was...
Yeah, that whole concept that aliens could travel interstellar distances, abduct people. Apparently they're wanting to keep their presence secret, and then they fail to do so. It's just so ludicrous.
It is asinine. I believe that Carl Sagan debunked at least part of in a really dramatic way, of an alien abduction story. They had reported that they saw the following stars, and they drew a star map. And many people latched onto the fact that this star map aligned so perfectly with a section of the sky. Well, Sagan took it and matched it up with, I think, about 16 different sections of the sky, saying that if you put enough dots in different places, we can match it to a section of the sky and claim that it's an accurate representation of the stars. It's not. Beyond that, yes, the idea that someone would expend the energy needed to travel interstellar distances just to find out what's inside our orifices is asinine.
Or to dissect a cow.
Yeah.
And that they want to keep themselves secret, that they would fail.
Breaking up again, Forrest.
He wanted to speak. He said to keep themselves secret. Correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, let me clear the line. I hope that you get some more callers. And thanks for talking to me.
Thank you, Forrest.
Thank you. Our lines are open. It's 215-2288. Call in anytime.
Yes, please call in. Back to the editorial rant. Remember that it is skeptical inquiry into the way the universe works that separates you from a mud hut on the savannah. It really does. Germ theory of disease has given us effective medicine that enables you to live beyond an average life expectancy in the early 30s. Investigation into the nature of oxidation and combustion reactions, as well as chemistry and metallurgy, has given us everything from cars to tools that won't rust. Even Einstein's theoretical work into the nature of space and time ensure that your GPS works. Not to mention Isaac Newton's work on gravity, ensuring that satellites don't fall out of the sky. Civilizations in general, organizations, nations, whatever, that don't question, that don't innovate, that don't exercise skepticism are prone to stagnation. It is only because of skepticism, which ultimately has led us to the scientific method and all the fruit that has borne, that we live in the modern world in which we do, that you're able to view this on television. They're able to hear my voice coming through the airwaves. It's fantastic, and it's all ultimately because of a skeptical impulse in human nature, to question.
And verify.
Absolutely. Verification is absolutely important.
Just sitting around question won't do it. You've got to actually do the work to verify what's real, what's not, and what works as science.
Absolutely. That's experimental data is always good. It's people that have questioned the nature of existence, weighed evidence, and sought answers that have built the modern world. Don't sully their legacy by listening to Jenny McCarthy drone on about her crystal child. Her words, not mine. Her crystal child's autism from vaccination and subsequent treatment with crystal light therapy. By the way, it's been confirmed that fortunately her child is perfectly healthy. He was misdiagnosed with autism early on. It was not because of a gluten-free diet or crystal light therapy or aromatherapy or anything else that the child was cured of autism, because the child never had autism.
True.
His mother's adult, but that's not his fault.
Right. And think of all the people who run Nobel Prizes in science throughout history. They have put forward theories in their time that required a lot of work, a lot of follow up on, but it was the people who were skeptical of those theories who checked them out, put the test to them, as it were, to validate that what they were saying was actually true, and did it on 100 labs across the world to verify that the results were still the same as what were proposed by those sciences. But skepticism was an important part of it. The verification, of course, was the follow-up and necessary step.
Absolutely. Simply because an experiment, a given experiment and its results have been published in a respectable journal, by no means means that the scientific community takes it on faith.
Right.
Often there is, believe it or not, quite a bit of controversy. Granted, evolution is not controversial. The fact that species change over time is not at all controversial. However, however, among scientists, sometimes the action of gradualism versus punctuated equilibrium.
The details.
Yes, the details are fiercely debated and fought over. This is to confirm their veracity.
Okay. Well, it's about halfway down the show now. We've got about time to take a mid-program break. In case you're just tuning in, this is Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. The Freethought Forum is funded jointly by them and by individual contributions. Shows are live most every Tuesday from 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, Daylight Time, on community access television here in Knoxville, Tennessee. You can also see it streaming online outside the Knoxville area by just going to ctvknox.org.
We have a viewer question.
Let me finish.
We'll take our break.
You can send us feedback at the email address on the screen.
freethoughtforum@yahoo.com.
But don't wait, this is a call-in show, and we're live today, July 11th.
July 10th.
And viewers are asked to call in now to the number on the screen or tweet us live during the show at FFTVKnox.
We have a caller, I think.
Sounds good. Welcome to the show. This is Freethought Forum. May we have a name or a nickname?
We have Dial Tone.
Yeah.
How are you, Dial Tone?
Now, both the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee help provide a social outlet where if you find that you don't believe in God, you're not alone. I believe we have a short video segment for the Atheist Society of Knoxville, if we could run that real quick.
One less God than everyone else? Well, you're not alone. The Atheist Society of Knoxville is a fun and friendly group of people just like you that meets twice a week at a bar or restaurant. We meet every Tuesday night following the show at Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria for happy hour. You'll find our group either inside or on the patio. Look for Richard Dawkins' silver-jacketed book, The God Delusion,
Can you read
standing
this?
upright on the table. On Fridays, we meet at Agave Azul or the Beard and Beer Market. But if you plan to preach, proselytize, provoke, or punch, please don't. We all question what we believe at one point in our lives. If this is the time for you, come join us for food, drink, conversation, and fun.
Yeah, no, I'm kidding. All right. We're back.
We have a viewer question. What was it?
Yes. Can you define skepticism regarding advancing science? How might it be different from simple curiosity?
Well, I think it all starts with simple curiosity. Curiosity, I would think, would be something that would be driven by the environment. You look around, you see things, you're curious about them. Skepticism basically refers to a response to claims, I would think.
Absolutely.
In a scientific venue, you would be skeptical of a claim. You might be skeptical of a claim made by one of your scientific peers and decide to do some checking on it by running
an experiment on your own. This is
Right.
why, in the scientific community, reproducibility is key and of immense importance.
Right.
There's a reason why a gold standard for any scientific journal article is to include enough information that one may reliably reproduce your experiment. If results are reproducible and consistent, then you have it. If it works like cold fusion and it only happens when no one's watching, then you can understand why it's difficult to believe those claims.
Right. A lot of skepticism was focused on cold fusion after that idea and report was put forward. The reducibility or reproducibility was not there. It was tried in many, many labs across the land and internationally, and the results were not forthcoming. However, there were some tantalizing results that people are following up on, and who knows, maybe down the road it will come to fruition, but at this time it is not.
Yeah.
So the skepticism was fully warranted.
I wouldn't take any bets, but yes, the skepticism is absolutely warranted. Scientific curiosity will lead you to perform an experiment and state your results. Skepticism will cause others to attempt to reproduce your experiment and check the results for themselves. That's what skepticism is. Even if you can't reproduce an experiment on your own at home, you can weigh differing opinions and use critical thinking to come to your own conclusions. Thinking for yourself is of vital importance.
Again, this is a call-in show. The number's on the screen, or you can tweet to FFTVKnox. The lines are open. We've been talking mainly about scientific skepticism, but there's a lot of skepticism in just about every field.
Absolutely.
And of course, this is an atheism show, so we would have to direct some of our skepticism toward religious claims. One claim in particular is you're going to live forever. Do you want to live in the good place or the bad place? Now, and I'm very skeptical of that claim because everything that I've ever come across that was living I know at one time will die. Now, they have told me that there is something inside of me, a spirit, that will go on. The spirit has no location in the body. The spirit, some people will say it lives in the heart, but cardiovascular surgeons have never found it. It may live in the mind. Brain surgeons have never seen it.
I've heard some claim that it's energy. When we're buried, our energy moves onto the earth. And that is actually absolutely true. Breaking of bonds within our body, the lipids, some of the proteins in our body by bacteria, fungi, maybe even a few earthworms or something. The breaking of those bonds does in fact release energy. Energy that's utilized by those organisms to function, reproduce, move on, etc. So yes, your energy does pass on after you die, but unfortunately for the religious, it doesn't seem to pass on to heaven. As best as we can tell, it passes on to the Tridivorce.
Well, to the universe. No energy or matter can be just created or destroyed since
Absolutely.
the Big Bang came or happened.
We're all made of star stuff.
Yeah, true. But there's no reason to believe that the energy that will dissipate after we die will go on and carry our memories with it. Now, we keep talking about Christians, but every religion that founds its basis in the continuation of your living soul has to prove more than just the existence of their God and the claims of the religion about that God. They also have to prove the existence of a soul. Not only the soul itself, the fact that we may or may not have a soul, but that it would actually live past the death of our body, that it would contain and could contain all of our memories from the life that we lived, that it would live forever, that it would actually go to a place and live there that is not anywhere in the physical world. They have to prove the existence of any of those places that are not in the existence or not in the physical plane. All of these claims have been made time and centuries by the religious of all stripes, and no proof has been, no even evidence has been put forward other than anecdotal evidence that had been put down in words in a book and claimed as true.
Which leads me to a favorite, I guess, pseudo-academic, pseudo-scientific topic, biblical archaeology. Absolutely. I adore this kind of stuff. Of course, this is anecdotal, but there are quite a few who study biblical archaeology only to lose their religion. Why? Because ultimately, there is no proof of any of the events of the Bible in the physical world. Some have looked to Mount Ararat in Turkey to find the Noah's Ark. There have been expeditions to the mysterious site on Mount Ararat. Nothing was found. Not a thing was found. Is God testing our faith? Or is it just not true? It's probably not true.
Well, not only that, but how long have they been looking for it? The story of the Ark is 2,500 years old. They've been looking for at least that long, and for the last 100 years or so, they've been using modern scientific equipment and methods to do that. Still nothing. And not only that, but they've come up with many, many reasons why the story in the Bible about flooding over the highest mountains and being able to cram all two of all the animals in the world on a boat. Just thinking about the fish, never mind the rest of the animals. Most of the fish on the earth live in salt water. A large proportion of fish live in freshwater.
Yes,
Very small percentage live in brackish water.
If the flood was precipitated by rain, which is inevitably freshwater,
to turn all of the
by the way,
oceans
I
into
have no
brackish
idea where
water.
we're getting this fresh water.
Yeah.
Maybe the poles evaporated, but
Then even all the fish would die. And what about all the plants on the surface that were under miles of water for, what, a year?
yeah.
I mean, even the plants would die. So we've got a problem with all of that. We actually have a Twitter question.
Excellent.
Gabriel has sent in a question. It says, if atheism is not wanting God to exist, is atheism not wanting God to exist, or is it God doesn't exist?
It is God doesn't exist.
The latter.
Yes. Well, Dawkins really framed this extraordinarily well. There is a scale that he proposes from 1 to 7. 1 is holding the absolute belief that God exists. 7 is holding the absolute belief that God does not exist. The vast majority of atheists, including Mr. Dawkins, sorry, not Mr. Dawkins, Dr. Dawkins himself, didn't work all that time for me to call him Mr., identify as a 6. I identify as a 6. On this scale, it means that I highly doubt that God exists. Should sufficiently moving evidence be presented, I would change my belief. It is not an immutable, absolute thing that that God cannot exist. It's simply that no evidence has been presented to me using my own critical thinking and skepticism. Religious claims seem positively absurd.
I like to say that if I were to wash up on a desert island and the natives brought me into the village and pointed to their totem pole and said, "This is my God," I would say, okay, I'm no longer an atheist. I believe in that God. There it is. It's their God is that totem pole. But then if they went on to tell me that that totem pole controls the weather, the volcano that's going to blow up or not, the diseases that sweep through the village on time to time, then I would be back to being an atheist, because they were telling me that that totem pole is just a representation. It's just an image of the actual God, which nobody can actually see. But even if they said that this is the God and I can see it, I wouldn't believe any of the claims of the supernatural attributes of that God.
Absolutely.
So,
There's also Bertrand Russell, his teapot assertion, very famous. They're called teapot atheists, which I am as well. Say I told you that there was a teapot orbiting the planet Mars. Our telescopes cannot see it. You have no evidence of this whatsoever, only what I've told you. Do you believe in the teapot, or are you a teapot atheist? I'm a teapot atheist. I don't know about you.
yeah, but you're also an agnostic about it, because you're not. You have
No, I'm not
knowledge
writing
of
it off.
Yeah.
But in all likelihood, the teapot doesn't exist. For functional purpose, I'm not going to believe in the teapot.
Gabriel had another point to this that I'd like to address. It says, is it not atheism not wanting God to exist? Well, one of the things about atheism is not whether we want it or not. It's just we don't believe it. It's a preposterous claim given the information that we have about the universe. But the other thing is wanting it to exist or not. Christopher Hitchens touched on this, and he had said, I don't see why anyone would want this particular God to exist. The God of Christianity, the Abrahamic God of
Islam,
Judaism would be a celestial dictator. Excuse me. He would have omnipotent powers to be able to see into your mind and to see if you were thinking the right things or not. You would be guilty of thought crimes. And the thing about it is, even the watchfulness, the judgmentalness, the opportunity for punishment would not end with death. It would continue on for eternity. Why would anybody want a God like that to exist at all?
A celestial North Korea, he called
That's the
it.
way he calls it, yes.
I apologize to our North Korean viewers. Wait, we don't have any North Korean viewers.
Now, he's got another Twitter here, if you'd like to go on with it.
Sure.
You can't just wake up and say, I don't believe in God. You must hear about this God. Something must drive you to doubt. I'm not sure exactly.
We're all born atheists.
No, we all born atheists, and then we're taught Christianity or Judaism or Hinduism or whatever.
Zoroastrianism, Scientology for the less fortunate among us.
As we grow up, that's one of the reasons religions want the children. There's the summer camps, the Sunday schools, the trying to get into schools to teach the children while they're impressionable, while they respond so well to authority figures. And what makes you think we don't know about it? I was born and raised in a Southern Baptist family and believed until I was 23. I went to church, Sunday school, and all of these type of events growing up. I know the stories. I know all the claims.
I've had an extensive Catholic education.
It surprises me when people say, when I say I'm an atheist, and they assume I have not heard the great news of the story that comes from Christianity. I've heard it. I believed it for a long time. When I got to be about 23 years old, went to college and studied all the other religions in the world, studied science, evolution, biology, anthropology, astronomy. It had an effect on me in that now the claims of these archaic biblical references no longer hold water. and it's just you can only go so far in believing when the evidence is so stacked against you.
Yeah.
Again, call-in show.
I think he was writing about something has to lead you to doubt.
Right, something does.
Absolutely, something does lead us to doubt. Something just doesn't sit properly with us. I remember when I was very young, Catholic school. Remember, I had asked our nun that was in charge of our religious education if Jesus was lactose intolerant. Why? Because I was a kid. I asked dumb questions a lot. It's what I do. She told me something very, very important. The Bible is not a history or a science textbook. From there, dominoes kept falling until eventually I arrived at I'm an atheist. I don't believe this. This is all absurd.
Mm-hmm. Now, our call-in number is not only for religious people or believers, whatever. If you have questions or would like to respond to Gabriel's comments that he made here and you're an unbeliever, please feel free to do so. We still have about 10 or 15 minutes left in the show, and we'd be more than happy to have you in here and discussing it with us virtually.
Absolutely. I wanted to, speaking of today's topic, skepticism, wanted to throw in a mild plug for the Skeptic Society. It's visible on meetup.com. Simply search Knoxville Skeptics. You can find it. It's an organization that is unaffiliated with RET or ASK, although it does exist and operates along similar lines.
Another claim of the religious, excuse me, they claimed that their religion is true because the New Testament fulfills the old prophecies so well. That's not hard to understand if you're writing the New Testament and you have the Old Testament here, and you can just sit there and correctly fill out all the prophecies and assign them to a rabbi, itinerant teacher. What's surprising to me is that they didn't.
The New Testament is not
didn't assign them as well as they could have.
The New Testament is not the records of the Roman Empire. It's not. It's not video. Even that could be edited. It's not video evidence. It's not absolute unshakable evidence of anything. It's written by the same fallible human beings who wrote the Old Testament. It's not difficult to write 2 chapters of a book.
And assembled by man, and promulgated at the point of the sword.
Absolutely. It's pretty easy to convert if there was a sword to your throat or a gun to your head. I certainly would convert. I don't know. I'm not waiting for a reward for my lack of faith.
Well, many people ask me, so, well, if you lack faith, you don't really. You have faith in something. And why don't you have faith in religion? Well, I put my faith in those who wear the white lab coats more than the ones who wear those ridiculous religious priestly robes, mainly because the people in the white lab coats don't claim to resort to magic, prayer, or any other superstitious or supernatural entities doing the work for them. It's easy to understand how they got the results. Not quite ready yet, unless you just want to take a chance.
No. We'll let the screener handle this. Yeah. But yeah, no, absolutely. I've heard described before that scientists are the new priesthood, an elite indoctrinated into esoteric knowledge unavailable to the rest of us. Well, that's patently false. Scientific knowledge is perfectly acceptable to just about every man, woman, and child on the planet with an internet connection. Anyone that can visit a library can be perfectly well exposed to science and the scientific method. But enough with that. We have a caller.
Yeah.
Hello, caller. Can we have a name or a nickname?
James.
James.
Do you have a comment or question, James?
Yeah, since you don't believe in the Lord or nothing, I was going to ask the question, through all these years, since the Bible's been about Old Testament, New Testament, how do you explain the hundreds of thousands of people that were tortured and slaughtered for the name of Christ, and all they had to do was denounce his name,
How about hundreds of thousands of people
and that they would have lived?
How about all the hundreds of people, thousands of people that were tortured and killed in the name of your religion? The Crusades,
I think he's speaking
Spanish,
about.
I know what he's talking about.
Yeah, they died for the name of Jesus Christ.
So you're saying, how can anybody die for a lie? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, if I don't see no man, woman, or child going to give up their life for a lie.
Okay.
How do you explain? I'm assuming you're Christian, yes?
Yeah.
How do you explain Islamic extremists willing to give up their lives for Allah?
Or
Thousands of them.
Or Waco.
I feel there's a lot of
Or Jonesboro.
misconception, and they're pretty much brainwashed since they've been raised that
They
hate
are
the Western
brainwashed.
people.
Right, they are brainwashed.
How do you explain the Tamil Tigers? Remember that the first instances of suicide bombing were not particularly religious. They were political in nature. How do you explain those?
I can't. It's not for me to actually explain.
Well, not
go back thousands of years ago, that people were less intelligent than we are per se now, of modern technology and all that. That
less educated
by
anyway.
word of mouth more than writing, because a lot of people were illiterates, that they didn't have
And much more superstitious.
studying and able to read and write and stuff. But I still don't understand how people are going to watch their whole entire families, be slaughtered off over a fake belief.
Let me say two things. One, because they believe it doesn't mean that it's true. They could believe it to such an extent that they're willing to die for it, like the people in Jonesboro and Waco. The people who flew the planes into the buildings, they could be misled.
There's a lot of people in Jonesboro,
let me finish, please.
They were forced
let me finish, please.
suicide when they realized what was going on.
Let me
that
finish,
they weren't
please.
going along with it.
Let me finish, please. The other thing is, if you'll go to any police department in the modern world, in any modern city, and ask them, when they put out a plea for information on a murder, that one of the first things that will happen is they will get calls from all over saying that, yeah, I did it. And they'll bring in the suspect, they'll talk to him, and it won't take them 5 minutes to find out the guy was out of town, he didn't have the opportunity, he didn't have the motive, that he just didn't do it, but they were willing to admit to murdering that person, face the death penalty.
They're looking for attention, they're loners, they're one.
Well, then you're giving reasons why people would die for a lie. This is the very thing that you called in saying you couldn't understand.
Ultimately, it boils down to, why is Christianity, in your view, exceptional, and why do things like brainwashing, desire for attention, the belief in a lie, why do these things apply to every other reason why one would die or watch others suffer, but not to Christianity?
And every other religion.
Well, I do believe in the Lord, that there is a greater power, that we just didn't evolve from monkeys, chimpanzees. If that was the case,
that's actually not how that works. But
don't see that no more. You don't see no blue-eyed gorillas walking around. You don't see no blondes, stuff like that. So
actually, we see a lot of really cool mutations. We found they're really, really interesting. They're rare because they don't survive very long in the wild. But we actually do see albino gorillas. It's amazing.
Long enough to get a group of people established to where we have our modern population, and then just quit.
No, it's still going on.
It is.
Yes.
Well, where's the latest sighting of man/ape, or whatever we've supposedly evolved from?
I don't know, but it's still going on. Evolution doesn't stop. The natural world.
There's a really great one.
Shows
people in the United States and the developed world in general, Japan, South Korea, well, not really South Korea, the United States, Japan, Europe in general. It's been statistically proven, it's statistically significant, it's not just a fluke. We have slightly larger heads than those born in less well-developed countries. Well, why is this? Because of the availability of cesarean section. Typically, a large-headed baby will kill the mother. She'll bleed out, and ultimately the baby probably won't live that long either. But thanks to cesarean section, widely available since turn of the century or so, relatively not dangerous from that time on, our population has been allowed to have these larger and larger heads. Granted, they're not going to be enormous because evolution works slowly over time, but there is a statistical difference in literally the head size of those born in developed countries versus those born in non-developed countries.
That would be an environmental pressure.
Yes.
Indians and stuff in third world countries that take bamboos and stick them in their lips and they change their shapes of their ears. And
that's phenotypic change. That's not that's not genetic. Why are you talking about it?
Well, you're the one bringing that part up. You're talking about evolution.
No, he's talking
You're born
about
with a larger head.
He's talking about.
I wasn't born with holes in my ear.
I'm talking about
No.
the
Okay.
evolution where it broke, that you all say that we evolved from animal, well, which we are mammals, I'm aware of that, but from going from a gorilla to a human being.
Actually, we did not go from gorillas to human beings. Gorillas are best categorized as distant cousins, not grandfathers.
Well, what's your opinion of what we evolved from?
A common ancestor.
Yes, a common ancestor. I mean, if you want to go back far enough, there's
Native American?
no Auroran. It's a we found the skull, we found the teeth. They're very similar. We have Homo ergaster, which is a relatively recent common ancestor, not with chimpanzees and gorillas, of course. If you want to go back to the common ancestor of all the great apes, we're going to have to go back pretty far. We're going to have to go back, give or take, about anywhere from 3 to 6 million years to find our common ancestor with chimpanzees. This is quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
But what you have to understand is that man did not evolve from the chimpanzee. At best, the chimpanzee could be categorized as a distant cousin, not our grandfather.
Okay, we got about two.
They ain't mine, I know that.
Got about 2 minutes left. Is there anything that you'd like to finish up with?
Nah, I'll just pray for your souls. God bless you.
Fair enough. Enjoy your day. If you do get a chance, The Greatest Show on Earth is an excellent book about evolution. If your claims and your faith are as strong as you say, I'm certain that a little bit of education couldn't harm them.
I'm great.
Have a good day.
Have a good day.
Remember that truth has nothing to fear from investigation.
Absolutely.
If what you believe is actually true, investigating will not disturb it a bit.
Absolutely.
Okay. And we're getting close, but we have time for one more comment or call, if it's a short one.
Caller, we don't have much time, but let's do this.
Good.
Hello?
Yes, I'm just wanting to know, in your atheism, do you have like a spirit religion?
We have a sense of awe, if that's what you're talking about, but as an intelligent entity, no.
No.
Just talking about the Spirit, the Holy Spirit.
No, ma'am.
No.
So, because I heard you say something about you was in church and they would come in robes and all that stuff. And there's a lot of churches that do that, but it's not the real spiritual religion. And I just wondered if you've ever felt that spirit.
No, we have no belief in spirituality, the supernatural, ghosts, angels, a Holy Spirit.
And
none of it.
And one thing you need to be aware of is that a lot of times churches will manipulate the environment while you're in church to get that type of reaction from you. They'll bring up the music.
I'm not talking about that, because when I first accepted Jesus Christ, I was like you. I have no proof or none of that stuff.
Yes, I'm very sorry, but we're run flat out of time. We have about 50 seconds left, and we need to talk our way off there. But I appreciate your comment, and I do understand. Thank you.
Placebo effect. All right.
Time to start wrapping things up. Get out your pen and paper. This has been Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee.
Please send us feedback. Leave a voicemail at 865-272-9060 or email us at freethoughtforum@yahoo.com or send us a tweet.
You can see this show on Tuesdays from 5 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time and Daylight Time, Knoxville station, ctvknox.org.
We're streaming everywhere except for North Korea.
Mm-hmm. And we'd like to send our thanks to Sam and Jonas for technical support and to the staff of CTV Knox and all our callers. Bye and remember.